share your screen and we will get started.
Yeah. Mm. Could you see my screen?
I can see it. It's a little bit, for some reason, crunched. It's like a weird shape. Okay, that's better.
No, better.
Okay, whatever you did is even better. You're getting warmer. It still is a little crunched, but this will work if you can't expand it anymore.
Oh, it's difficult. So, yeah,
I think this should work.
yeah. Well, I'm going to talk about an app for wound healing, for negative pressure wound healing devices, and my paragraph is, as a patient, I want to be able to follow the right use of wound healing therapy device, so that I get healing correctly and secure. This is the devices, and they create an app, Wireframe, to know how to use these devices. Yeah, this is the first part of the Wireframe. And we are going to do to selection two buttons, what create an account or get started. First of all, create an account. We have different functions to put it here. Maybe you can put email, something create like that, create email, or choose the password and choose the username. Well, the date of birth, we can select what is your date of birth, and the gender, male, another different option we have here, and sign up. If you complete all, we have to sign up and create the user and go to the welcome. When we are creating an account, and we have another option that is when we sign up with Facebook. It goes to the same part. Get started. We have three main functions that we are wanted to show to the person who are wanted to use the devices. What is instruction that I want to show in a videos, because it's easy to follow and to avoid the missing use of the device. The device setup, the second video, and the third video is the maintenance about the devices. And another question, maybe the user doesn't have or doesn't know something that we don't have in the instruction. Maybe we have some contact of us, and maybe have the option to, if we have in our working hours, have a help service in that moment. And have the third option is friend ask questions, that the people can search their question and put a different select option and from videos or answer or image. Well, that's all.
Great, thank you so much. I really liked the detailed feature list that you've got. Let me ask you, do you mainly see this as sort of an educational companion, or do you see this as something that might actually tie into the device itself?
Well, I'm doing a project in a medical devices. I'm creating these devices, a vacuum, these devices. I'm doing that, and I'm trying to do something for this. I'm trying to apply the project for these devices.
Absolutely.
Christian,
Go ahead, man.
Christian, I have the same question, so maybe I can help focus the question a little. Christian, do you want the app to work with your wound care app and help it function like that kind of companion, or is this for education? Are you going to use the app to teach someone how to use it?
Yeah, it's for education. It's for how to use the correct use of my devices.
Oh, awesome, dude. Awesome.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And it's something that we've seen a lot with COVID tests, as an example, where everyone's trying to use these different methods of tests, and some have instructions, some have YouTube videos. I think having a companion app can be very nice, especially if this is a complex device that someone will be using frequently. So I like your usage in that way. Now, I think, maybe a next step might be to actually look at, could this integrate somehow with the device and make it even more sticky? That could be like the next phase. Does anyone else have any questions for Kristen? All right, thanks so much.
Okay, thank you.
Next up, Jeanette. And then after Jeanette, we are going to have Giovanni.
Sorry, guys, technical difficulties as I try and present this. Okay. So I'm pretty sure all of us, or many of us, have heard this or seen ads for games that advertise to improving brain function or improving your memory. But what if we could apply this sort of this concept of using games towards people who have cognitive impairment already, like Alzheimer's disease? So my app is an idea called IDAD, which is an app that's reinventing Alzheimer's disease diagnostic testing by using statistics that are gained from specialized games to help monitor disease progression in real time and outside of the constraints of a regular physician office visit. So these games are able to be assigned by a patient's neurologist and are based off of the Montreal Cognitive Assessment, or MoCA test, which is the gold standard for diagnosing and subsequently monitoring Alzheimer's disease. Because the MoCA test focuses on 6 different areas of cognitive function, like short-term memory or language or executive functions, these games will be geared to address those different types of cognitive functions. So physicians are able to get a holistic and continuous view of the disease progression in their patients, so they can more accurately and efficiently adjust their treatment regimens based on patient needs. Similarly, I'm hoping that patients will be able to play an actionable role in their healthcare progress in a way that's both non-threatening and able to be completed in the comfort of their own home and on their own time. Also, this app is also going to be geared for caregivers or loved ones that are assisting patients along this journey that they have with their disease, because they're able to obtain tangible data about their loved one's progression, since many of them may not have the background in order to be able to communicate their daily observations on what they see in their loved one, because like the disease process of Alzheimer's isn't linear, and it's not the disease manifests itself in different ways that aren't very predictable in different types of people. So if a patient goes into the neurologist's office for an office visit one day, they could be having like a really good day and be able to demonstrate more cognitive functions than they actually do have. And therefore, you're not going to be able to get an accurate depiction of a patient's progress if you're just looking at that one view of like a biannual patient visit. So that's where my app comes in. So when patients or providers open up this app, they'll be greeted by this kind of personalized welcome message, as well as a calendar view showing what games are currently assigned for that day. So if they click this drop-down menu, it'll show what games they have assigned, and then they can click these and then move on to the window where the game is going to be played. Alternatively, they could go towards the games tab in the menu bar and search for a game by name. Let's say, for example, they went to a neurologist visit the day before, and in their after visit summary, they're given their game assignments. They can also look it up this way by name. Again, it shows the assigned games for the day as well as the assigned games for the following day, just to give patients and their caregivers a way to plan ahead for the future, to see how much time they need to dedicate to playing these types of games, because especially for patients with more progressive forms of Alzheimer's disease, keeping them on a strict regimen is important to help, make sure they're not feeling stressed or bring any kind of, threatening events into their lives. So when they click on the game, of course, the game window will load with those subsequent directions. But if they need any more help, they can click this little help button, and that'll lead them to a more detailed description on how they should be playing these games, as well as the option to add a comment to their doctor. Like, say, for example, maybe this time around, if they played a game, this same game like a month before, but this time around they feel like it's more difficult, that's always good information for their doctor to have. The games view for the physicians looks a little bit different because they're able to see like a comprehensive catalog of all the different types of games, as well as what category these games would fall into, what kind of cognitive functions they're going to test. By clicking this assign button, the physician can virtually assign it to their patient's app, and then the patient, it'll pop up on their home screen. At the bottom is just like a radio list showing, excuse me, showing the patients what games they've assigned for that day. And then the progress tab is going to be the same for both patients and providers. It'll give them a comprehensive overview of like the recent achievements their patient's done. Like, for example, this patient has been on like a language learning streak for the past 12 days. And then at the bottom, it'll be a visual graphical depiction of how their progress is compared to standardized test measures based off of the MOCA test, and based on the different 6 categories, which they can navigate to the different categories using the forward and back buttons, as well as different time periods. Like, say they want to look at the entire year of 2021 versus just April of 21. And finally, the contact tab is for patients to send messages to their doctors, maybe, how the experience is going, give them feedback on any sort of improvement, as well as being able to schedule appointments and even finding the next available appointment with their physician. I included this option just because I know as the disease progresses, language starts to become an issue. So, and scheduling appointments is inherently stressful already. So this is a way to kind of help minimize that stress on the patient. And finally, like the physician view for the contact sheet is going to be able to reply to messages or comments from their patients, as well as address the scheduling requests. And that was my presentation. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much. A lot of great detail on this, and I love the double-sided use cases. Before I ask anything, does anyone else have any questions for Jeanette? I see a hand up. Pablo?
Yeah, great presentation, by the way. For this app, would it be like a subscription based, or I don't know if I missed that part at the beginning, would it be like free to use? Would you need like a kind of like a prescription to be able to access the app?
I think this would be subscription. My idea for it was for being subscription based and able, hopefully in the future, to be able to be covered by insurance, since these types of games are going to need to be formulated using a diagnostic testing. So it's going to take a lot of, capital to get off the ground in my, if I'm looking in the future. To be able to use these tests, and it's going to be requiring input from physicians. So, we want to respect the physician's ability and their time in assigning these games and monitoring that progress.
Mary?
Yeah, I wasn't quite clear. Are the patients playing the games on the app, or is it just, this is a list, your doctor suggests the caretaker give these games to them, and then the caretaker has to input the results? Or can the patient go and actually play the game?
Oh yeah, the games will be embedded in the app. So so like if they see like the match the animals is under the assignments, they'll like click on that link and that page will load within the game apps, and they'll be like, oh, here's a picture of a panda, and then select like what animal this is, a panda or a tiger, and then it'll self-populate the progress and data into the progress sheet.
Follow-up, considering the demographic of the people who have Alzheimer's is the elderly, have you considered having this be for a tablet? Because a lot of them are hard of seeing, it might be hard for them to navigate a phone.
Yeah, I did think of this in like an iPad or like an Android tablet sort of version. My initial thinking on this was that it'd be the caregivers that would be, they'd have like a caregiver or someone to advocate and help them through navigating through this. And that I went with that line of thinking. I was like, okay, you know, not a lot of nurses may be carrying around iPads when they come into like home care situations. So like, it might be easier to just put this on a phone for now and then expand, you know, to a iPad version later.
Great. Hey, one housekeeping thing. I've got a few people who are backing out of the early presentations. Can I get just raise your hand if you would rather go in the second half?
I guess one question, Will,
Yes.
is I think me and a couple of students made storyboards of on the wireframe, but not really like clickable
Oh,
things.
clickable. Don't worry about clickable. That's a
Okay.
complete bonus. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, then.
Yeah. The main thing that I want to see is the user story, functions tying into that story, and then showing that you can create what look like buttons, but they don't have to act like buttons.
Got it. Okay.
That's pure bonus. So do not be intimidated by the strength of the early presentations. And great job, Jeanette. I really like it. My main question was going to be similar to what Mary was asking about. Sort of, I think it'd be a great opportunity with an app like this to focus on, okay, what could you do to make this very user-friendly given the type of audience that you're going for? Not saying you would have to, but it would be a cool, I guess, slant to that prototype if you're able to focus on that a little bit. And then, sorry, I know I was supposed to give a warning, but we had a few backouts. Aiken, would you be ready to go?
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
Okay, great. And did I pronounce that right? Sorry, Aiken?
Akin.
Okay, Akin, sorry about that. Okay, great. So Akin will go next. And then no one else raised their hand about needing to go in the second half, correct? Okay, great. So then after Akin, it'll be Kevin. Kevin Zhang, sorry.
All right. So I'm doing Reddit for medical imaging. So for my end user, I'll put myself in their place. As a physician, I want to be able to share medical images so that I can source judgments on those images and also share interesting images to my peers, emphasis on peers. And then from the peers perspective, as a peer, I want to be able to view medical images so that I can participate in conversations about the image with my peers and discover interesting images. So this first wireframe is really just emphasizing the simplistic URL up here at the top, just a short URL, medimages.com. And then similar to Reddit's use of r/, we use m/ as an easy identifier of specific directories. So m/ broken bones, m/ broken or chest x-rays, etc. And then you've got the logo at the top right, always directs the user to the front page. So we'll click that. Brings us to the front page. This is what it looks like if a user is not logged in or registered. You can see, you can search med images, look for posts, use keywords to look for specific posts. You've got login and sign up at the top. Trending images, what's hot, what's being interacted with frequently. And then some sorting stuff here in the middle. Again, what's hot, what's being interacted with a lot today. Specific directories, so you can choose everywhere. Say m/ broken bones, you can choose that. New posts, top posts, posts that are upvoted a lot. And so then you have a example of a post with an upvote, downvote button. This is for the community to regulate posts. Upvotes will distinguish good posts. Downvotes will flag posts that aren't relevant. And it's a source for med points, which I'll kind of go into a little bit later. You have the title of the post and a flare. The flare is a keyword that users can tag their posts with to make discovery of posts easier. So if I was looking for only abnormal posts, I would go up here, type in abnormal, and it would show me all the abnormal tagged posts made by physicians. And then here at the bottom, you have the number of comments. A commendation, users can purchase commendations with real life money to tag posts that they think that are above and beyond in quality or content. A share button, a save button to bookmark, and then an etc. where there's a report button to report posts that say, someone uploaded a picture of their dog instead of something relevant to the site itself, which is only for medical imaging. So what does it look like if a user's logged in? Basically the same stuff. You'll have short form posts, just a preview, title, same stuff, except you have a create post up here. And then at the top, you have a messaging bubble. It'll notify users if they received any private messages by any users, a notification bell to notify the user if any other users have interacted with their comments, their posts, their replies to any posts, user profile image, username, and then med points. Med points is a way to identify new users or established users. They're accrued by comments, replies, and posts, and upvotes that you gain on those. And then again, you have your create your post here. This will redirect to a post creation page that requires an image. Because remember, for end users and peers, they're specifically looking for a place to share medical images, which is why post creation will require this. And then again, self-regulating, hopefully downvotes and reports will purge posts that aren't relevant to the website. And this is what the create a post page will look like. Pretty simple here. Choose your post, image and video. The image is required. A link if you want to include one. Title, text is optional. And then you can kind of add a flare here, save it as a draft, and post. So what is a short form post? When you click on it, it's going to expand out, show you all the details of the post. You can upvote, downvote, what directory it's in, when it was posted, by who, the image, how many comments. You can see the comments down here. This is where the end user can receive public feedback on the image that they're posting. And then to the right, you have basically a short blurb about that directory, m/broken bones. What's it about? When was it created? How many users are in this directory? And if you want to join the community and get notified when you post or put in this directory, you can get notified. So if a user say wanted to sign up, they would click sign up. They'd be redirected to a sign up page. The first thing that they're going to be asked is their National Provider Identifier Number, NPI. Remember, our end users are physicians only. So NPIs are going to be, it's basically the Social Security number for a physician. So they'd first be asked to put that in. And then you have a descriptive text on what the website's about above, and a description on why we're using NPIs. And it's only for a registered account. So you'll hit submit, and then you'll be prompted to enter your email, password, and reconfirm your password. And you'll have your account, and you can use med images as much as you'd like. So I got.
Good job. I really like it. Any questions from the peers? Leilani.
Yeah, I have a question. Just regarding like, because you are uploading like medical images of like MRIs or like X-ray, I assume. How would you go about kind of like verifying the user? Like, is it just going to be medical students, or is it going to be doctors? And how do you go about verifying it?
Yeah, so it's only doctors. Well, healthcare provider entities as well. NPIs also identify healthcare service entities, so like companies. But mainly we're looking for doctors which have their NPIs. And like I said, NPI is basically a doctor's social security number. So they would be first prompted to use that. And then it would obviously check to see if that NPI was already registered or not. If it wasn't, then they'd be forwarded to create their username with their email and make a password and make an account.
Okay, thank you.
Jeanette.
I had a question. So users have the opportunity to upload images. How would you like stipulate patient confidentiality or like standardize that across the board? Like if you're uploading images of MRIs or X-rays, would that be like a community guidelines that they'd have to agree to, and then, or would it just be like kind of self-regulated by people who are monitoring the website?
Yeah, so we would hope that the physicians would know to omit patient identifying info before they're uploading images. But yeah, with the system of med points and with the system of upvoting and downvoting things, and then also here, I omitted it, but in here it will be a report button. Basically, so, if the community sees that this is not an appropriate post, they can flag it, they can downvote it. And then hopefully by then a moderator would, take down a post like that. We're kind of leaning mostly on that NPI requirement that physicians can only sign up, and hopefully a physician knows not to upload patient identifying info.
And I think there's definitely multiple ways that you can communicate that. If you end up doing this as a prototype, you can either assume that you're doing some sort of filtering, right? Maybe making sure there's no text on an image, or you could rely on user moderation, as I think a lot of websites like Reddit do rely on. But of course, there's challenges there. But those are all things that you can incorporate into your features that could be really interesting. Any other questions for Akin? So I do have one question. I think this is great. I really love this idea. My main question is around the user story. So you mentioned physicians and peers. I was wondering, is there a difference between those, or because it seems like everyone is a physician? How are you differentiating in that between a physician and a peer?
So physician and peers is basically the same thing.
Gotcha.
I say it from a peer standpoint because maybe not all physicians want to post medical images.
Okay, I see.
But maybe
So
one
sort
of
of
both.
like creators, content creators versus content consumers.
Right, consumers, and then, if you have like a group of radiologists that just want to go in and practice their skills and post and provide feedback, then they could do that, and that would be more peers.
Great. And then another question I have is, what do you see as the main purpose for this? Is it just sharing out of interest? Is it trying to get to a diagnosis? Is there sort of a focus that you think this would be most valuable to the users for?
I think most valuable to users would probably be getting feedback and kind of diagnosis. But I think that it can also, be educational for training physicians as well. Being able to go on here and look at like images that are highly upvoted for being puzzling, and training physicians can just not look at comments and try to figure it out themselves.
For sure.
And,
Yeah, I would
check it that
encourage
way.
you, if you end up running with this as a prototype, to try to pick a sort of, we call it in entrepreneurship, a beachhead strategy, right? To where you can get a very detailed and direct use case, and then just like go all in on that, and then you can expand from there. So whether you're gunning for a diagnosis or training or just general interest, that will help determine what features you will need to support that use case. So I think that would be my advice if you end up using this as a prototype. But great job overall. Thanks so much. Okay, so next up is Kevin Zhang, and then Maria Mello would be after that.
So you guys can see and hear me. So my app is relatively simple, and I designed it to be really intuitive and user-friendly. And I think the elegance of it is in kind of the data that we're accessing and pulling and compiling together. So my app is called Insurance Finder. It allows you to find healthcare plans near you, but the cool part, or the more useful part about this, is that you can also specify for specific health concerns if you want to specifically see some sort of specialist or whatever, and then you can also put in a coverage date. So I have two screens here. The first one is just the home screen, so it asks where you located. You can either manually input the location of interest, or you can do a locate me GPS button for easy location input. After that, you can put in a specific health concern that you have. So let's say you really want your insurance plan to cover orthopedic treatments or OBGYN, because I know different plans can vary in terms of their support and availability and coverage for different types of specialists. And then finally, like let's say you're traveling somewhere or you're moving in the future and you're going to a different state and you want the coverage to kick in September of that year, or maybe next year, you're just planning ahead and looking at different options. You can put in a specific date, or you can just put you can bypass that function by clicking the I'm just browsing button without any specific date. So you'll just see what's available now. Now the next page, sorry, I'm just moving my screen. So the next page is going to be what populates. So here we have a return button to go back home. These are the three options that you can tinker with. So it'll show the location that you originally inputted, any illness that you put, and also the coverage starting date, but you can modify that, those inputs directly on the screen. Here is going to be a table that populates with the insurance plans, Right now, I've only listed 4 just for brevity, but you can also scroll down if there are more plans available to you. I did this on purpose because I think a lot of uninsured patients or just patients who are new and shopping around for insurance plans can get easily overwhelmed by the number of plans out there and the amount of information. So I want to kind of streamline it. So just showing 4 at a time to make it a bit more approachable. And then if you want to scroll down for more options, you could. We have this rating here. It's out of 5. So, and this rating will be kind of from the patients that are on the plan, their rating of the plan, and then the number of doctors nearby. So the number of doctors that are covered under that plan. So you can also tinker with, you can either rate them, or sorry, you can rank the results by the rating. So you can go for a higher, lower rating, or the amount of doctors if you really care about doctor access. So how many doctors are nearby. And then the link here would be a link to the enrollment page. Here, you'll also have the map that showed up from, or the specific map to the location that you inputted. You can expand the map to a full screen to see it. You can zoom in and out to find specific neighborhoods. So let's say like you live in this area, but you work in a separate neighborhood or a separate city, you can kind of pan through the map and scroll there. And then it'll also populate the doctors that are nearby and the profiles for them and which insurance companies they take or which insurance companies cover those doctors. And for the user stories, so I had 3 different ones. So one would be an uninsured individual, as I mentioned before, they want to look at health insurance options. And then the functions that I've had would be inputting the location or using a GPS. Somebody who's new to the area and wants to see which plan has the greatest coverage and the best patient reviews. I've also let them see, oh, sorry, that function should be changed, but just the table ranking that. And then finally, somebody anticipating moving to a new location, you can also change the date and also change the specific health concern that you want to see. And that'll modify the results that you get as well. But yeah, that's pretty much my.
Great work. Any questions for Kevin?
How much money do you need for this?
Probably not that much, although I think like putting together the data and getting all that information out there and compiling it together to make this app look easy, like the information is what's the most important. So maybe money for that. I don't know how much it would be though.
There's an actual business case for this. That's actually, I think this is actually a really good idea because I've encountered this problem. You've probably encountered this problem too. So yeah, good job.
Yeah, I think you did a great job, especially on the user stories. I think you captured some very great use cases that really need something to be put in place to address them. I think the challenge that you'll want to address if you move forward with the prototype is, how can I make sure that as a user, if I'm one of these 3 use cases of user, and most people will only probably be one of them at a given time, how do I make sure that I'm not being sort of crowded out by the features that are not relevant to me? So working on whether that be through menus or switchboards or something like that, where I can sort of tell the application what my current situation is, and then I can focus exactly on that that feature. Because I think that, you know, obviously insurance is incredibly complicated and for no good reason, and you can help fix that, right? And so making that as user-friendly as possible, I think will be the biggest challenge, as it would be with any insurance type of app. So I'd encourage you to focus on that if you end up moving forward with this as a prototype. But great work overall. I really, really liked the user stories, and I think the features did a good job addressing them. I think then now the presentation of those features in an app form will be the next move as you go through this in a prototype.
Thank you for the feedback.
Any other questions? Okay, great work. Next up will be Maria. And then after Maria, let's see, Kevin, I know you mentioned you had some scheduling issues. Are you ready to go next?
Yeah, I can go anytime.
Okay, great.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So I was working on an app, a basic app for a reminder and tracker for patients that have chronic diseases. So you know that with time you start taking a lot of pills and like you can lose track of what you actually have to take. So my final user will be those patients and also physicians. The goal for them is to track the medications and the doses. So here are my user stories. So as a patient, I want to see personalized reminders of medications. And as a physician, I want to keep track of the medication and doses of my patient. So if we go here, this would be like my first screen. So you will have the possibility to either like sign in or log into your user. So when the patient means like he want to personalize, like you want to make sure that they can log in, they have the user, they have the email, and like everything is like on track. So this is the sign in page, the email, the name, email, and password. And also like, you know, like people made mistakes. So if you actually have an account and you click here, it will take you to the login page. So you will enter your username, your password, and also like as you want it to be personalized, you have like you can click your remind me, and like the next time you get into the app, well, your information is already there. So once you're logged in and you have like everything set up, it will take you to your home page. So it will say like, hi Maria, like this is the medication that you have to take today. So let's imagine that right now it's 10 a.m. So at 10 a.m. you will have a reminder here with the medication that you have to take, and if you want to postpone or stop the alarm that you have. And like that's only the reminder, but you actually want to track what you're doing, right? So you have the chance, if you click here, it will guide you to the calendar. So here, like you can go to past days and like the day that you're in and like future dates, and you will see like the medication that you have to take. And also you have the possibility to add more medication to that. So that will guide you to add your medication. So in this screen, you will have to put the name of your medication, the dose that you have to take, the time, and the duration of the treatment. And you save your results. And like if you click to the history, you can go here and see all the medication that like you as a patient have, and like the physician, like my patient has in the list, and you as a physician can add medication too. And yeah, that would be all.
Great, thanks so much, Maria. Any questions from the peers? So one thing that I like about this is the simplicity in focusing on a very important user story, right? So here, instead of trying to do a bunch of different things, we're just saying, you know what, adherence is a huge issue. And let's figure out what is the simplest way to do that. I think sometimes we get in trouble with, especially user-facing applications. And by we, I mean well-funded companies, right? Like they get in trouble with these user-facing applications because they make something it's just too much at once. Whereas this is something that I think you could very simply get the user to use on a regular basis. So I think the thing to focus on this, if you end up going forward with the prototype, is what are really the most user-friendly ways to display these? And I think you did a great job in the wireframe of getting us started on that. And so just thinking about how can we do this? I mean, this is actually the type of app that I can see you doing really well with the prototype, right? Because you're not reliant on, you know, importing a bunch of different stuff. It's really just, how do I add medications? How do I make sure that the reminders come at the right time and all that? And this is all doable stuff within the course of the project. So I think focusing on that user friendliness will be how to hit a home run with this as a prototype.
Okay, thank you for the feedback.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, great. So next up will be Kevin.
Okay, so let me move this here.
Oh, and then after Kevin will be Leilani.
So I made an app that probably target market is only me. It's called the Refunder App because I buy a lot of things, and after I decide I don't like it or I don't need it, then I return it. And so what the idea is, as a retail shopper, the user story is for someone who wants to keep track of like what things they find, what they buy, and like when they return it. So the whole crux of the idea is the simplicity of being able to take a picture of a receipt and it auto recognizes what the receipt is. I know those features actually exist now, being able to read receipts and then add it to like a scheduler to tell you that, okay, and this is how many days left you have, and then put it on your calendar. So on the main landing page is here. It just searches for all your purchases that you've logged into its database. Like, let's say on April 5, I have a Walmart, I bought speakers for $150. And if I click on that, it'll bring me to this window, another window. It's just like has the image of the receipt. If it's available, you can expand it, the cost and the details of the transaction, and you can actually click on it to see like, oh, I already returned it, or like it was denied, and then it goes back to this checklist, seeing like what items have you returned or not, just to kind of keep you reminded. But also there's a returns calendar that kind of tells you like, oh, don't forget to return this thing on the 4th of April, and then if you click on that thing, it'll show you a list of things that you can return. And if you want to add a new receipt or a new item, you can press this button on the plus, and you have 3 options: a receipt picture, and you can just take a picture right there then and there. It'll access your phone's camera, take a picture of the receipt, and then it'll send it to an image processing. This is going to be on the back end, and then once it's processed, it goes into the receipt details, and it'll tell you like what happened to it. If the image is not processed, it'll just return it to the landing page. You can also, let's say you've already taken a picture of the receipt, you can just upload a new picture by clicking this button, and it just looks for your image browser and then process the image and such. You can also do manual entry, but it's more cumbersome, but it works anyways. One of the functions is that the crucial function of this is the simplicity of the image recognition, so you don't have to input it manually, but of course that is dependent on the software that I do not control. And also what I think is really cool is being able to link this app to your calendar, Google Calendar or whatnot, and it'll give you like a reminder like, hey, 5 days before this receipt due date for this return, like remind me, put it on my calendar like a free, like, hey, you don't forget to return this thing because it costs you $150 if you don't return it. And so, and then it'll probably what gonna be on the back end is also when it sticks like, oh, the company is Walmart and it's an electronics, it looks up for the company return policy for that, and for that local Walmart specifically, like maybe it's 14 days open, 28 days unopened, and it'll auto calculate the amount of dates you have until it has to be returned. So that's basically the idea. Is very simple, except for this image recognition, but I know this part has been done pretty successfully these days.
Great. Yeah. And as far as the image recognition, I think that's something that it's okay to fake it, right? And as you're doing your prototype, I think what I would want to focus on would be that user experience and what that flow would look like. Mary, question.
I have a couple. So first thing that comes to mind is, how are you gonna make this concept health related? Like maybe you would adapt your user story. So maybe, because like when you're having to buy all these medications and like assistive devices, like a knee brace that works and what doesn't, and when you're in like pain, it's easy to forget about when a return date is. So maybe if you focus it specifically for like medical equipment, you can make it more health related.
First thing, I didn't get the note that this was supposed to be health related. It helps your mental health, because I'll have less stress thinking about when the return date is, and I have to look for my receipts. But so it does help with that, but I didn't know it was supposed to be health related. And so, but on your question, it's medical equipment doesn't work that way. When you return, usually people buy medical equipment for need and not trying things out. Like when I want to buy like something like a knife or something, or like a kitchen knife, I buy like a lot of them because I want to try all of them. And then the ones I don't like, I just return them.
Oh, you answered my question. Mental health.
Exactly. So if you want to make it mental health, it's health related, it's mental health. Reduce your stress so you don't have to think about it.
My other question's about the wireframe itself. So I'm a little confused. Is this a mobile friendly website like app where you have to use an existing web browsing app, or is this a downloadable app? Because I'm a little confused by the pop-outs.
The pop-out is just me being too lazy and trying to conserve space from including multiple Android screens.
Because if you're trying to make it like, because there are websites that are categorized as apps, and a big problem with them is making it mobile friendly. So I
Yes.
think that's a very interesting thing you could focus on. And
It's actually easier from my experience with like designing, working with web design. It's actually easier to start from the app version. And then because nowadays, these days, when you do like a vertical version of like this, is actually a mobile version of a web page. So it's actually, I think for my experience, it's easier to work from the app, like a mobile version first, and then convert it to like a web page. But
Yeah,
we'll,
I think with this, because of the fact that you're building in reminders and you're hooking up to the phone or the camera of your phone, I think that works really well within an app context. That being said, you can do it on either. You know, I've actually built something very similar to this for personal use. And my wife and I, we are involved in the foster care system, and so we upload receipts all of the time related to that. And actually, the main reason I bring that up is because the challenge that I have is actually remembering to upload the receipt in the first place, right? And doing that in a way that does not feel like a burden, right? So I would encourage you, if you end up proceeding with this as a prototype, to think of how can you really engage the user to make sure that they are uploading when they need to, so that it's there in the first place. I think once it's there, having the reminders of when it needs to be returned and all that will be relatively trivial. But figuring out how to, like, once they make that purchase, how do we get them to then take a picture of the receipt? Because it's easy and it's in their best interest to do so, but there's an activation energy in doing that. So how can we lower that activation energy as much as possible?
do we have time for, I guess, one comment on that? Is it possible? I know some apps do this. It asks for permission to scan your gallery. And I know Samsung phone actually knows which pictures are actually receipts. It actually tags it.
You could do that, and that would definitely skip a step.
Yeah, because then you just take a picture and then you forget about it.
I think it's that taking a picture that can really be a challenge. So thinking about what would be that prompt, and that's not going to be an essential thing to cover, but that's sort of something that comes to my mind as you're telling me about this application is, how am I going to remind someone to do that? Would it be something you mentioned you tied at the bank account already? Would the reminder happen after that? Would it be something location tracking wise? Maybe if you go niche in a little bit, right, where maybe it is tied to healthcare purchases in some way, maybe reimbursable purchases by the insurance company, and then there's a partnership with that insurance company, then that could tie in somehow. So there's different ways to do it, but I think that would be a good challenge to focus on, and that would be a big differentiator, I think, for you.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, another thing I would add is, one thing that people never forget to upload is business expenses. So I'll just leave it at that, right? So thinking about how can we play on the reasons why no one forgets to upload those in this context. And there might be opportunities in turning this into a healthcare thing to motivate in that way, if we think about payers.
I think Pablo and Ilani has questions.
Pablo.
I was thinking a possible solution to that would be if you like connect it to your credit card, debit card, or whatever, and there's a way for the app to somehow like it will see when you purchase something, and then it'll find a way to screen out the purchases that are like relevant to the app. You know, like if you went and bought like Chipotle or something, obviously that's not something you want to get reimbursed for. But if it's like a healthcare related item that shows up on like your bill, then it maybe will prompt your notification like, oh, like we just saw that you spent so and so, like do you want to upload like a receipt?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And with that too, though, you want to avoid the creep factor. So it's sort of like a fine line of making sure that it's useful but not creepy.
just to add on to Pablo's, I was thinking like if the person downloads the app on the phone and it kind of gives you like, oh, do you want to set up your Apple wallet or Google Pay? And then it can like give you a reminder every time you use your Apple wallet or Google Pay. That way you have that reminder when you pay.
Yeah, I like that. And I think, so the way that would manifest in this prototype would be, of course, you're not going to integrate into Apple Pay with this. Like, I don't even know how to do that. I'm sure it can be done, but that would be a challenge. But what you could do is show, okay, if something like that ends up being integrated, what would that look like on the user facing end, right? Is it something where something would pop up and all I have to do is click that pop up and suddenly my camera's already on and ready to take a photo, something like that.
Got it. Thank you so much for the inputs.
Okay, great. Thanks so much, Kevin. So next up will be Leilani, and then after Leilani, we'll go with Lynn.
Okay. So can you guys see that? Okay. So the application I was doing was it's like a period tracker app, but mostly focused on PCOS, which is a condition where women have like irregular periods and everything. And so this is the home screen of it. At first, you'll see the calendar, and this is where you can go ahead and log in your symptoms. So right here, I have like just like common symptoms you have during like your period cycle, as well as your mood. You can select any of these, and then you can go ahead and add notes. I just put here on the right side what happens when you could like save your information. You'll see that it gives you like that confirmation. And then once you're done, it sends you back to the main page of it. When you scroll down, you have I focused on 3 things. So one of them is a community like forum, basically for other women to talk to other people about their experience with PCOS or any questions you have. So if you click here, you can go like, you'll see like the feed with like someone's story or a question like I was talking about. And then you're able to like see the post. The scribbles is just like writing. But you'll see it, and then you can comment, give it a like, and then you can like go back. And if you want to post something yourself, you're sent to this page where you can put a header for your story, your experience, or whatever you want to write, and then you write down your post. It also gives you the option to be anonymous. So I put that there, and then once it's posted, again, it gives you another confirmation that it's posted, and you can go back to the main page. The other user story that I wanted to focus on was like diet and PCOS, because that they're coordinated. So there's like 3 groups of food that women should focus on, and I added here like an explanation and how it impacts, and down below I put the groups of food that is important to add into your diet. And then if you select one of the groups, it sends you to this page where it tells you what it does to your body, and then it gives you recommendations of food. So it gives you a whole list. And when you go back to the page, you can also have other resources here that I was able to like link. And so when you go back, now with the food, I also made one of the user like stories I talk about was like keeping track of what you eat. So I kind of made it as like a food journal where you can get this when you first click on it, you have these 3 options of adding in your weight, and then putting your current goal, and then, like your weight goal, and then your current weight, and with a chart that will give you like your progress. And then I also added water and exercise. So you can just keep track of how, like, for example, like how much do you exercise during the week. In addition, the food diary. So this is where you'll have like 3 dates, and then here on the top right, you can add and you can go ahead what you had for each, like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I also put the option of putting what food category do you really focus on. And so you save it and you go back. Obviously right here, like you can have 3 dates. And if you want more, you go into the calendar and you get a whole week of your journal. And other than that, I also put like a profile like section where you can like, you know, have your username and your password. And then again, another tab of what PCOS is and with more resources on the bottom. But yeah, that's mostly it for me. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions for Leilani? Pablo? Or is that, no, that's a clap.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
It's not a question. It's just because Leilani and I work all together, like we bounce ideas off of each other, and I have a little more insight into her ideation process. I just want to say that you took a common idea and you combined a bunch of different common things that exist to make a new novel app. And I, as an engineer, I really appreciate that you did that. And it's excellent. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Yeah, I agree that this is something where it's got a lot of different features that, if tied together, can really give someone a very good picture of, you know, where how things are going in their life in a way that there might have been a lot of guesswork without something like that. And so I think that's very powerful. I'll make a few more comments on that, but first I'd like to get all the other questions out. So Alexa, you have a question or comment?
Yeah, it was I guess similar in the topic of incorporating apps that sort of already exist, especially like the exercise one. I was thinking, have you thought about, instead of having this app do it, incorporating data from other apps or from like other devices that a user might already have?
Yeah, so one of the ideas, well, one of the things I was like thinking about, if this were like an iOS, I know Apple it likes to connect their like fitness apps with its health app together, where you can like all your data is already there, so it just transfers your data to that app or vice versa. So that can, if it, yeah, I guess I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, and that's definitely an approach you can take from a user-facing standpoint. As you build your prototype, you're not going to actually integrate with these other apps, but you can at least show what that interface would look like, where one would integrate it. So how that button looks, where I would do that, etc. I really think that there's a lot of powerful features in here. I think one thing that you'll want to focus on because of that is, okay, what will be those initial features that will get this off and running, right? So when we talk about that MVP, what do you think is going to be the most important feature to start with that you can then roll out for user testing, et cetera, and then build the other features on top of that? So thinking about sort of what would be the prioritization, I think would be very important for an application like this. And obviously your end goal is to get everything done, but your intermediate goals will be to sort of triage that process as you roll out to your users.
Okay, sounds good.
Great work. I like it. Next up would be Lynn. And then after Lynn,
1 second.
will be Kavya.
Can you see my screen?
Not yet. Okay, I can see it now. It is a little bit zoomed in, so if you're able to zoom out.
How about now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so my app is that connecting patient to like the local support group, any support group that they can find, and based on the idea of that they can do online or in person and check the availability of the groups. So from the front page, we can see the like the logos and like this is and menus with link to other frame with more information and how to contact your group that you enroll. And over here, there's a help button that will link to another that will link to more information about the apps and by the end we put like a survey to see if this app is helpful, like collecting data for the developer, as well as I was thinking of like connecting with some type of like biopharm companies to develop this app. So this can be useful for them to collect more data to analyze the patient journey along the way. And for more information about the apps, when clicking on the link, we direct to another website link with how navigate how the app work and how to sign up and who are we kind of things. And on the front page, it will show a pop-up with login to enroll. Since we will see a list of support group, but then it's have a limit available information only. To be able to see like the full list of the information, you have to be able to log in or have to sign up. So when clicking on in that, then it will direct to another page where you can log in with your username, password, or a sign up form to submit it. And if you're clicking back to the submit, like clicking to submit or the login, it will direct back to the page where this is a list of support groups, and you can filter, is it on based on your personalization. So if you want to meet up online or in person, and how's your availability with the group schedule. So if you click to the first group, it will have a bunch of information about the groups and only hidden information if people will sign up. And when click on the schedule or the contact, it will direct to another page where it can tell it to your specific need or who to contact if you want more questions about the groups. And that is it.
Great, thank you so much, Lynn. Any questions for Lynn?
What makes yours unique to other support apps for patients or websites, whatever, that serve this purpose? Like
I was having idea as like this is an app where you can find all of the support group available for all of the disease or like, and it can be tailored by disease or by the company name or company drugs. So it will help you more tailored to, okay, if you're like the same group patient, then they will have like different encounter with their side effects. So if it's tailored by the company drug, then it will help them gear toward to the support group that they want to find.
So do you see this as an app that people will stay on after they find their appropriate support group, or do you see it as more of almost like a matchmaker that will connect them with the group and then their interactions will be on some other platform?
To be honest, I kind of like envision of it to be like connect them to the support group, but it's also like along the way, because I was thinking that for based on the biopharm companies story, that they want to see the retention rate and like other user metrics and to track with the side effects and to track the patient journey. So this kind of app would help the company as well. So I trying to make it like along the way that with their journey.
Great. So I think probably the next step, if you end up moving forward with this as a prototype, will be thinking about how does that circle sort of closed, right? So we have the patient who's now found support or a group or maybe even just a medication connection with a biopharma company. And then what would that look like on both sides that would keep people engaged, right? Because I see with this sort of finding your resource, that can be a very valuable skill, but it wouldn't be one that would keep the patient around on the app. And it doesn't need to be. But I think you want to think about, what do you want to get out of your interaction with the patient? And if it's just to do the handoff, then you focus on that handoff. If you want to keep them around, show us some of the features that would keep them around. Does that make sense? But yeah, I think there's definitely a huge need here, because there's a lot of patients who don't know what's available to them. And an application like this would be incredibly helpful for them. And then, as you mentioned, could also be helpful for other players within the ecosystem, such as the biopharma manufacturers. Any other questions for Lynn? Okay. Did I announce who is next? I think I did. Kavya, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I didn't blindside you. And then next, after Kavya, will be Chris.
Can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay. And sorry, my laptop webcam doesn't work. So kind of the idea for this app, I hope it's not too small, but kind of the idea, okay. So kind of the idea came from my experience working in clinic, where I would see physicians often recommend patients to try this low FODMAP diet, which is used for kind of diagnosing or seeing if like patients might have IBS or something along those lines. And what I found that while working in clinic, a lot of patients would find it really hard to stick to this diet because it's pretty like complicated. And there are a lot of things that you have to cut out. So the main end user for this app are like patients with GI symptoms, but no defined diagnosis just yet. So kind of the app, so the main user stories include kind of trying to see if whatever they're eating complies with this type of diet. The second story for the patient also includes just tracking the diet along with associated symptoms so that they can be diagnosed, since that's often an issue for these patients. And then lastly, they looking at recommendations that will help them not experience kind of symptoms. So kind of for the main page over here, it's just an overview page. So it kind of just talks about if that meal was tracked. So you have breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks, just seeing if that was recorded by the patient so far. And it kind of, ideally, the app will kind of use an algorithm to assess if that food was low FODMAP or not. And then as far as the health, there's kind of a survey that patients can take every day. So that way, over time, the app hopefully kind of gains an understanding of like which foods can cause symptoms for the patient. So that just includes some like 5 simple questions. And in this case, this patient already filled out today's. And then lastly, just any recommendations if there are prior records available. So that's kind of the main homepage. And then the next page would be kind of the log page. So the log page is kind of similar if anyone's ever used any other kind of food tracking apps. So pretty similar to those, where you have different kind of meals, water, and then you can either like search for a food or recipe, you can scan a barcode or just delete an item. So if they wanted to like enter a certain food or recipe, they could search for that. And then the app would hopefully just be like, if they said like, I don't know, like apples or something, then that could rate it appropriately and tell them if that is low FODMAP or not. And these are just prior entries that the patients can save. So just for ease of use. The other option is for them to like scan a barcode, see if it matches, and then they can input that in. And the other thing is to just like kind of pick an item that they entered and then delete it. So the next tab is just kind of resources that the patients can use. So it just goes into the diet and just links to some kind of like external resources. Sorry, it's kind of small. And then for the data tab, what this will do hopefully is they can kind of pick an appropriate tab. So in this case, it was like symptom distribution, and they can see over the course of a certain month, kind of what symptoms they experience the most. And hopefully the app will be able to tell them like, oh, these foods are causing your symptoms. So it's better that you avoid those foods so you don't have those symptoms. And then it also gives the patients to either option to download this data or send it directly to their physician for the physician to look further. and hopefully diagnose them correctly. And then the last page is just like profile, which just says how long they've been on the low FODMAP diet, because you're not supposed to be on it forever. And then because there's 3 different phases and it just says what phase they're in, and there's some other settings. But yeah, that's basically everything.
Great, thanks so much. Any questions? So I think this is great, and it's very feature rich. I like the detail on it. I think this, similar to some of the other ones, like Kevin's, the challenge that you'll run into with, and this is anyone trying to develop a consumer or patient-facing app, is especially when you need them to sort of give daily or even more than daily inputs, is how can you keep them motivated, right? And so I like that you have it in the context of this diet. I think that's a very neat way to do that. But then just also thinking about how are you going to incentivize them to keep going on, not to give up on their diet, not to just think that it's too annoying to keep uploading that. Is that something you've given some thought to yet, or would that sort of be like a next step?
In terms of like just seeing if it's too complicated to follow or not, just motivating them. I think ideally, like as the app recommends them foods that they can eat and not cause symptoms, because the list of foods here is kind of like there's dozens and dozens of foods. So hopefully as they continue to track, they get better recommendations, and then they stop feeling the symptoms that would cause them distress, ideally. So I hope that would be motivating enough for them.
Great. Yeah. And I think that is definitely a key element, is, focusing on people with very specific needs who are dealing with problems, and following the app, they can avoid those problems. But there is, I guess the reason I bring it up is just because there is a lot of work that is being done around all kinds of apps like this. Of what is the best motivator? Is it using the app to send encouraging, affirmations, or trying to get them, sending them notifications? Is it having sort of peer notifications, peer coaching to try to get people to keep using it? I would encourage you to think about that a little bit, because that could be like a very important differentiator as well. But I really like what you have in terms of the data and providing something useful with the app to show people, hey, what are the right foods that will help them with their food map diet, or FODMAP. So I think that's a great approach.
Yeah, and I think just to like add on to that too, another thing that could be motivating is that what I found kind of just through my clinical experiences was that patients would try to follow this diet, and then they'd have some trouble, and then they would just not end up getting a diagnosis because they didn't really follow the diet. So they would just end up getting frustrated all over again because they would still have the symptoms, but the physician couldn't diagnose them correctly. So hopefully this will also like help them get that correct diagnosis and then get whatever appropriate treatment that they need to.
For sure. Yeah. So I think you've identified a lot of very key sort of interface points there that I think could be really interesting to dive into if you end up pursuing this as a prototype project, to try to make sure that you've got something that really could change the game in terms of how people are able to adhere to this diet.
Sure. Thank you for the feedback.
Any other questions? Okay, next up, Chris, and then after Chris, we will have Sophia.
All right, so welcome to, just move the screen here. All right, welcome to my real-time continuous glucose monitor app. This would be a companion app that would pair with a real-time glucose monitor, and ideally this would be for like just like a lifestyle monitor, which aren't approved yet by the FDA. Currently, they're just for prescription use only, but this one would be just something that anyone could wear that was interested in their health. So the first screen would be the login screen, just for medical data security. And then you would want to pair whatever device you have, and then there'd be a little prompt to enable Bluetooth or whatever kind of RF it's going to use to pair. So your main screen is going to be, the whole point is to be real time because it's a continuous monitor. So you would have like your chart of the levels, and then just because like there could be, so like the idea would be like you would have like alerts if your glucose drops or something. So if you're exercising, you can like let it know that, you know, if there's like an abnormal data point coming in, like you're exercising and like you're not dying. So, and then you can have little things to record a meal time, you know, at a certain timestamp, as well as like a health event, like if you feel lightheaded or something, to correspond to like whatever timestamp your glucose levels are at. And then you would have like a basically a three-page menu, so you can go to your log and then basically change the date resolution to weekly, monthly, annually, from daily, and then it would just give you like a chart of, you know, whatever that time period is. And alternatively, you could search for a specific day in the past if it's too long to scroll to on the quick select. And then there's also an option to export the data history to something that you can like print out and give to your doctor or something. And then the final page would just be like your account settings and, you know, profile, stuff like that. So that is it.
Any questions for Chris? Kevin.
So what happens if does it alert like the medical professional or like the PCP once it hits a certain level? Or is it just like a monitor?
So this one, I mean, you could, I mean, that's definitely something you can do. I mean, it's not prescription. I mean, the point is that it would be for everyone. So I don't think it's like necessarily needs to have that, but I think it would be a great feature, like optionally.
So I think I am understanding the user story here as sort of having that universality to it. Is that correct, or am I'm missing something there?
Yeah, so this would just be for someone like a customer that would be interested in like their nutrition just as their lifestyle, like people that are interested in fitness or, you know, certain diets or eating, that want to monitor their intake.
Gotcha. So it's sort of like a non-clinical glucose monitoring for people who just want to sort of be on top of those metrics in their day-to-day.
Exactly.
So one thing that I would be interested in, given that, is, so if that's my user, right, that's going to be a very different user story from, hey, I'm someone with type 2 diabetes and I really need this to tie into some sort of clinical thing. So thinking about, and maybe you've got some answers now, but thinking about what are really the key elements that would make what you need to build different given the audience that you're going for, right? So I think one thing that you did put in is, I think it was the slide number 2 with the pairing of the devices, you know, that could be an area to go into, is how do I make that part so simple that it can connect with anything I've got, right? Because people will have different things. And then that could be an area to focus. But just thinking about what are the areas that you're going to need to focus on given the specific user segment that you're going for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, exactly. Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Chris? Okay, thanks so much, Chris. So we've got Sophia next, followed by Julie.
Oh, after I'm logging on to my laptop right now.
Oh yeah, no problem. Julie, are you ready, or should I didn't give you a warning.
Yeah, I can go ahead.
Okay, great.
Okay. So my idea was basically Uber, but for health. So just go quickly over the storyboard. So as a patient, I want to be able to have access to quick, affordable transportation to the hospital, so that I can get care I need in a timely and inexpensive manner. And some of the features in those bullet points I will be going over down below. So basically this idea is kind of just giving an option to patients to sort of have a cheaper alternative to, say, an ambulance, and to sort of have a reliable method of transportation to get to and from the hospital. So here we see the Uber Health app. This is the home screen. I will be going into the account details. So basically the user would toggle on the account button and they would be taken to a sort of window seen right here, where the user would have access to their settings, past trips, and they would be able to contact customer service for help. So basically, after clicking on settings, the user will be able to edit and store their information, such as their name, their phone number, their email address, and they would be able to bookmark a couple of addresses that they would be able to sort of have easy access to when searching for a location and trying to plan a trip. So here we see once the user clicks on the past trips, they would be able to see this window over here. They'll basically give them a overview of where they were picked up, the destination, when that was, and whether or not it was completed, and the price. And then afterwards, if the user encounters any sort of problems with their trips, they may send a question in this area here, and they would be able to send it directly to a customer service agent, or they would be given the option to call them at any given number. So the first step, of course, would be to input your pickup location. Of course, if you have your home saved in the in your settings, it would come up as one of the top options. And then you would also be able to, with regards to where to, the user would be able to sort of have an idea of where they were at any given moment, and they would be able to see nearby hospital and clinics and sort of be able to toggle on that and then have that auto-populate in the where to. Otherwise, they would be able to input the destination manually. And then one of the interesting things that I included with this app was sort of the user would be able to pick which type of transportation they would want. With a basic ride, a driver would come and pick them up and drop them out at the hospital. Or they could sort of choose an emergency option where instead of an ambulance, a fully equipped sort of medical type van, not exactly an ambulance, but very close, would come with all the necessary sort of gizmos and gadgets, and they would have health personnel inside the van as well. And then assisted is basically like a basic ride, except they would be accompanied by a certified nurse or physician assistant or something on that sort of level. And then here, the user would be able to select the date and time of pickup. So toggling on this would lead them to this window over here where they would pick the date and the time that they would like to be picked up. And then down here, since one of the things that I really wanted to feature as a patient was transparency. Oftentimes with ambulances, you do not get that transparency. So here they would get an estimated cost of the trip. And if they are okay with that, they would select pay now. And then it would take them to this window over here where they would have the option of PayPal, credit or debit, or Apple Pay, and then they would hit confirm. And then once that's all set up, the user would have the option to view their trip details. So very much like the Uber app currently being used, they would have an idea of how far the driver is and when they would arrive by. And here, this image right here would populate as a picture of the car that the driver is using. And here would have a description, license plate numbers, so the patient feels safe in identifying whether or not the car is for them. And then here they would have the option to call the driver in case anything happens. And then they would also be able to toggle on this and add pickup notes such as pick me up near the front porch with the flowers or something like that. And then here it would tell them where their destination is. currently, and they would also be given the option to change that destination if needed, and within good enough time for the driver. They would be able to change their destination, similar to the button up there where they could type in the address manually and confirm. And then afterwards, if the user feels like they don't need the ride anymore, then they can cancel. And in canceling, we've added this extra alert sort of notification so that in case the user accidentally hit that button, it wouldn't cancel the trip immediately. They would be given the option to confirm yes or no. And then afterwards, if the user no longer needs this page, they would be given the option to go back to the home screen down here. And that's it.
Great. Thanks so much, Julie. Any questions for Julie? Mary?
Is this like an RSVP thing in advance, or do you have a walk-in immediate feature?
Yeah, so that would be control down here. Let's say you wanted to be picked up now, then you would be able to select the current time and date.
Mm. And is this targeted towards patients who are not impaired physically, like, or is it geared towards a handicapped person who's maybe not so much in an emergency situation and they don't need a caretaker physically with them, but maybe they're in the wheelchair? Or is that not something accommodating that you could accommodate?
Yeah, that's actually a super interesting feature that I could probably add, where maybe instead of basic ride, I could also add another feature that indicates that it would have a wheelchair accessible van. That's definitely something worth adding. Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, I really like the detail put into this. And actually, first, Kevin, I'll let you go.
No, you can go ahead.
I was going to say, I think there's some great detail and some really interesting features. I think, and this is sort of a feature of a few of them so far, is I think you've got a lot of great ideas. And so this is great for the getting it all out there. And then I think the next step will be to figure out how do you help differentiate it for a given user, right? Because what I'm seeing here is that the user might actually have several different user stories, right? Because you've got your 3 buttons of the basic ride, the emergency, and the assisted. Those might actually be separate user stories to break down and figure out how would the app change a little bit for each one, and how do you make sure that the right one is sort of shown to the right person? Do we want to get a profile of them ahead of time to see, if I'm let's say I have hemophilia, I might have a lot of routine use cases for this, but I also might want to be really set up for that case in which I have a bleed, right? And so I need a very quick way to get into that emergency as well. So thinking about how the different use cases might differentiate between each other, but then also interplay with each other, I think could be super valuable for setting up that user interface. The other thing that sort of struck me was who's paying, and we don't have to have an answer now, but if this ends up being a prototype, is how much would this integrate into a payer versus this would just be sort of an out of pocket, but a way to get you to the hospital quickly and efficiently. Kevin.
Yeah, I think your wireframe is actually really good because it's really detailed. But I think it has a problem with my wireframe now as well, is like the landing page has a lot of things going on. And I think it's probably easier to do, like, after you fill the screen, after you select the mode of transportation, then you go to another screen just to kind of make it more simpler. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that's sort of a sequential thing, right? I mean, in the case of what you all are doing right now, you're showing me that you understand how the features fit into the user story and that you can put those features on a wireframe. And then the next step, right, for some of these, I would say a good third of them is to figure out how can you clean up that interface so that if I'm doing one thing, I don't have to look at the other feature, right? And everything sort of is zeroing my focus into what the app wants me to do to accomplish my goals. So that sort of becomes the next step, and something that I think these wireframes and this one particularly do a really good job of setting the stage for that next step. So great work on that. Mary, did you have another question?
Yeah, well, a comment, just listening to your feedback, I was thinking the only like pushback that you might get in going to prototype is the emergency function. And are they gonna, because when you call for an ambulance and you go through a dispatcher, you're automatically put in a queue that goes to the closest hospital. So if you could find I mean, you don't have to code it, but just like maybe say that it's also going to notify the dispatch so this person gets in the emergency queue. That way they're not, when they get to their destination in an emergency situation, they don't have to wait longer than they absolutely have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's where I think teasing out the sort of, okay, so we have a patient who needs to get to a hospital, but the different use cases might have a slightly different workflow to really properly hit a home run on that user case in each particular example. So I think that gives us some really good things to focus on if we move this into prototype stage. And then, yeah, you know, with emergency too, it's like, how am I, if I'm bleeding or something, what would be the most effective way for me to tell the app right away without me having to like scroll through or click a bunch of buttons, like, hey, send me an ambulance. So I'm thinking about that just as an example of how each user case might have slightly different requirements. Great work though. I really like the detail and I think the use cases are solid. Also, another thing with this one, and there's a few others, I'll try to include it in my feedback with the grades where there are existing examples that you can benchmark off of and see how they fall short, right? So that there is an Uber Health, but I'm not entirely sure all the ways in which it works, but I think that there's one way in which that works is it's more the providers actually using Uber as opposed to the patient. So this could be your differentiator. But being able to benchmark will really give you a good idea of how you want to fine tune your app.
Thank you.
And just because someone else is doing it doesn't mean that you shouldn't, right? I think that's one thing that I hope to be able to communicate in this class is that you all can be the next Uber. There's no reason you can't. Right. I mean, Uber just started as, hey, I wish there was a better way to get a cab. And so they were nothing at first, and then they became a behemoth. So you can always do it better than the incumbents. And in fact, as a startup, you often have an advantage over the incumbents in that you don't have to protect your vested interests. So be confident in that sense. Okay, great. So next up, Sophia, are you ready now?
Yes.
Okay, great. And then we'll have Alexa go next.
Okay. So my wireframe is about making a social media platform for elderlies or senior citizens who live in the communities. And what a problem for them is elderly engagement. And a lot of the times, elders are like they don't know how to use the apps that we use, like Instagram or Facebook, because they can be too complicated or they just have too many functions that they might not need. So Elderbook is a simpler version of that social media platform where they can share their thoughts, pictures, or any upcoming events with other people in their community. And this is if they were living in one of those senior citizens community, it'd be specific for them. And in this homepage, we have share a post where users can share anything from a text or pictures or any videos and upcoming events. In the event, users can keep up to date with current events that are hosted by their community or hosted themselves. And on the left here, on the right, we have the calendar, and users can organize their schedule and set up alerts for appointments or any events that they want to attend. Below that is the medical records, where they can add their full medical records and take it to their doctors or their next appointment, and they can just pull up on their iPad. And then on the bottom, we have entertainment, where you can play games or watch videos, listen to music or podcasts to keep them entertained. And then below that is an emergency call for help button in case they need any assistance, or if they have any questions, it would contact their nearby caretaker. But it would not be their go to help button. It would be like something where you can wait a little bit and then the caretaker would come. And then on the top here, we have the home, where most of the functions would be on here, and then the directory will have the map of the campus area for any scenic walking trails, or if they get lost and they don't know where they are. So they'll have a location finder and pinpoint exactly their location. There'll be marks for bathrooms, clinics, or any cafeterias nearby. And in the settings, user can customize their text fonts, color, alert sounds, any language, edit their profile, and the layout of the icons as well. And then I went into the share a post. And then when users click to share a post, they have an option to either add a new post or add friends as well, the users who use the app. And they are able to also like, comment, and share or reshare other posts. And then the username would be down below here. And then there'll also be a call for help button on every single page in case of any emergencies. That's it.
Great, thank you so much. Any questions for Sophia? Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, this is more of a comment, but I was wondering if you gave any thought into like customizing the entertainment features even further, depending on, like, let's say when they were born or where they were from, because that can dictate a lot of the entertainment, music, movies that were popular around that age. And it's a very like big nostalgia factor for them. So maybe if there's like some sort of feature that will take that information in already when they make the account, and then when they click on entertainment, like let's say they were born in the 60s, then the first like playlist pop up or whatever of music from the 60s or something, just to make it easier for them instead of having to look up things. It like recommends it to them. But I think this is a really sweet idea. It's really, I like the layout.
Yeah. I think definitely customizing to their needs is important, and maybe like before they make an account, they are able to personalize that.
Great. Yeah, I think this is a really great use case that I think is very well illustrated through your features, right? I mean, everyone can see right here, like how with the large icons and having the emergency on every page, like what you're trying to do with this app, I think is very clear. I would like to see, if you end up pursuing this as a prototype, a little bit more of a dive in depth into the user stories to try to figure out, and also that might help you triage what are going to be the most important initial features, right? What are those most important user stories to address with this demographic that will feed into your prototype MVP. But I really like, it's very clear from this what the look is going to be and why that's important for your given demographic. And by focusing on this demographic, I think you really set the stage for the type of development work that you would be doing if you move forward with this on a prototype. So any thoughts on the user story side though? What you feel are maybe the most important things to start with?
I would say like sharing and like events, and or not events, but like pictures, because I feel like a lot of elderly, they like to share with people about like what they did with their family or like any news, and being able to share with their community without having to go to each person, and like have the support via like online.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, I know that the elderly do tend to want to share a lot. I mean, my grandma would send like chain mails to the whole family up until she couldn't use email anymore. And maybe an app like this for better or worse for the family, would enable her to keep doing it, through a simpler interface. So I think that's definitely a user story that might go underappreciated by people who say, oh, the elderly, they're not social media savvy. They don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Mary.
Just a comment. I think you did a fantastic job of just seeing, like you can tell this is for somebody who has difficult seeing, or specifically like the elderly, you can see it, but maybe a way to differentiate between this is an app for someone who is hard of seeing versus specifically to the elderly, make more specific icons that they'll be more familiar with. So I know a lot of elderly people did not grow up with games that still like video games, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe the headphone, maybe you have like the record player for the audio part or something like that. So they could relate more to it, and you're tailing it more to that demographic and narrowing it down. And I guess when you develop more user stories, it'll be more clear, but it's a way of differentiating and making an existing idea better.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity here, because I think the elderly tend to be ignored with most app developers, right? Because most app developers are not elderly. So how can you take advantage of that fact to create something truly unique? And that might be something that could feed into some cool user testing if this ends up being pursued as a prototype. Great, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up will be Alexa. And then after Alexa, we'll go to Morgan.
Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Alrighty. Alright, so for me, I worked on a VR app, or it might become a compilation of apps, depending on how many user cases I have. And it's for learning, analysis of surgical tool use, and also for professional preparation in the field. So these are my user stories. I sort of laid them out this way because there's a good amount of them. Some of them sort of just memorization and practicing so that you can finish, medical school. For others, it's practicing surgeries so that you can sort of anticipate various things that might happen during a procedure and be better prepared. For surgical tool producers, they sort of want to compare what their new tools look like to what's currently out there so that they can stay ahead of competitors. And then for hospital administration, they want to see the performance of their surgical team and try to enhance it by using this app. The second part is for more on the patient side, will be the patients, the family of the patients, students of occupational therapy and physical therapy. So that's more on the recovery side, and then just the general public who wants to learn. We covered this already in the previous class, but patients mainly want to be comforted, so they don't really need the simulations of the surgery. The family sort of wants to know how they can offer support to the patient. And then the students here sort of want to figure out what specifically do patients need along this process. General public just wants to learn, so that's very, I don't really cover that one too much. But some general app functions that I'm trying to achieve for all of these groups would be customization by using a profile survey, searching so that they can input the topics of interest, interactive learning, so that's some simulations, and testing. So that'll be quizzes or some statistics that can be sent between various groups. And so that starts looking like this. This is the Surgery to Recovery, or S2R, app overview. And this is just like the general sign-in page. You have the screen with the username and password. If you need to sign up, there's more fields here. And then what's most important is this last part where you get the app interface will actually change in complexity according to what group you fit in. So for patients, it's more important that it's easy to use, sort of easier to understand language. But students and surgical team, hospital admin that are more familiar with the language can be given more complex, I guess, sources or resources to look into and practice with. And producers, it's sort of more of a different type of language that they use in their field. So they sort of need to be targeted as far as like how easy they are to use, what the content is, and how important the design is for each of these groups. And so for students, we have medical students and then the OT and PT students that I mentioned before. They have different questions that they'll answer. So for medical students, they maybe want to remember anatomy, order of procedures, what tools to use. Oops. Yeah. And then for OT and PT students, they sort of have different topics that they want to look into. Maybe they're working with older patients or younger patients. They want to focus on, are they able to, eat and swallow their food? Are they able to move around? How's their mental health? And so later on within these, there can be further customization. And we get sort of like the two sides of what's happening before and during surgery, and then what's happening after surgery. And so for the medical students, this is sort of more of what it'll look like. The options here will be for various simulations, some practice games. These are some that I found on a website that I thought were funny, like the surgery on a grape, and then there's the threading of like a needle between two blocks to improve dexterity, and then just different ways to learn and to see how far they are with learning with different learning styles to really cement their knowledge. And so the community tabs and news tabs, this is something that we see in like across all of these different use cases, but this is what changes to for students. It's more important to have like study sessions. Maybe they want to have professional speaker events and some question and answer columns. So, and this is just like how the VR would work on here. And then for OT students, I'll just jump to the community tab. I think it's most important that they learn from patients about their needs. So instead of just having like study sessions, it would be like sessions where you can talk to patients that are currently recovering in the field that you're interested in practicing in. And instead of like just anatomy, it may be a simulation of a patient's home with sort of like a searching game, like what are some potential hazards or what are some things that you could change to help a patient along the recovery process, make it easier for them. Alrighty, and then the patient side of sort of their simulation game, which comes like after procedure, and their community will sort of link like to other social media sites to really capture what other patients are saying about how they got through the recovery stage and what the expectations are for them, how long it took them to recover, and what things set them back or helped them recover faster. Okay, and then for the surgical team, this is sort of where it gets to more heavy on the VR itself. You want to have individual practice and also team practice, which gets really complicated, but it'll be some of the same things for the medical students on here for the surgical team. But one thing for the community tab or the news tab now is that they sort of want to focus more on what are some current innovations and what are, the newest, I guess, procedures or tools being used that can really facilitate their performance or their success. And if they're tested like on the VR system, then there's this information that will get sent to a database. And that will be coded on certain criteria. And that information can get passed on to hospital administrators. And then the basic information on the providers can get passed on to patients if they're looking for physicians. So it sort of loops back around. And this is just what it'll look like for the hospital administrators. They have some ways to filter out what they're looking for with their employees, and then some statistics. It could be individual or overall. And then this is sort of the same process that'll happen for the surgical tool producers. They'll be capturing the data from the sensors and how it should be versus what they're seeing with these simulations. And yeah, that's everything. If there's any questions.
Great, thanks so much. Very thorough wireframe. I think you obviously put a lot of work and thought into this, and I think excellent job there. I think the main question I would have though is what would be the first focus, right? Because sort of thinking on that MVP standpoint, how would you, if you were to move forward with this on the prototype, what do you think would be the most important focus?
I think probably getting the surgical team member site down, because it's their information that's sort of transitioning into all of these other like phases of the app would probably be really important. But if you wanted to like start practically and get funding for this to take off, you probably want to focus on the producers since you'll probably be able to get some investments there. And they're obviously very interested in seeing if they can really improve their tools to, you know, be the preferred tool amongst different members of a surgical team, amongst different like hospitals. So it just sort of depends. Like for me, it's still surgical team, but I feel like you would need some help from the producers.
Great answers. Thanks so much. I'm gonna try to keep moving them along though, so that we can make sure everyone gets a chance to present today. So next up would be Morgan. And then after Morgan, let's go with Jihao.
Okay, so my app concept is called the Botox Bubble, and it's like a hub for cosmetic injectable services. So, you know, part Wikipedia, part Yelp, and part like digital consult app. So just to start off with the user story. So as a potential client, I would want to be knowledgeable about the types of treatments available. I want to have the ability to see a list of estheticians in my area and be able to seamlessly interact with estheticians to ensure that my needs are well met. And then, so this is the patient app view, but then a 2.0 concept, if this was to get brought forward, there would be a app for the esthetician. So as an esthetician, I would want to be visible to the maximum number of clients and be available to them to answer any questions. So some features that you know, help with this user story are the information page to kind of give some knowledge to the patient or the client, the local finder for services in your area, and then some sort of like chat features and embedded facial scanning features to help the clients identify areas of concern. So starting off on the home screen here, this would be, once you log in, you can have a little icon here for your patient profile, or you can skip all of this and search for a specific person if you're really wanting to shortcut the process. But here, the first bubble would be the information / like learn more button, which would take you to this screen over here on the right. So it goes into, you know, like what are the services offered? How long do the results last? Pictures of results and whatnot. So from there, you can then go click the services near you button, and you can be taken to the explore screen. So you can get to the explore screen through this button or through on the homepage, the explore button there. So this will give you an option to put in your location, maybe like a zip code or a city or whatnot. And if you're looking for something in your area, you can filter it with this button here. So maybe you want to see something within 15 miles. Maybe you're kind of worried and you want something that's like a 5-star service. So you can put that all in there, or maybe you're price sensitive. So you can add that there and it will come up with some recommended options. So for example, there's a place in Claremont called The Treatment, gives you a little blurb about them, links the website, and it gives you a link to like any customer reviews that might have been posted. And you can see before and afters and whatnot there. So if this is a place that you want to learn more or talk to a esthetician there, you can chat with them directly through this second button, or you can even go through and get an instant consultation via the app, where the camera will, connect to your phone, and you can do a digital face scan and select areas of concern, or it can identify them for you. And that consultation can then be taken to the specific service provider, and they can, see that and talk about the results there with you. Yeah.
Great, thanks so much. Any questions? So I have a question. What do you see as more of the focus here? Would you see it more of the connecting, sort of like how Yelp would connect you with somewhere to eat? Or would you see it more along the lines of sort of keeping that relationship going? Like I can see you have the consult screen, which maybe might have a telemedicine component to it. What would you see as the main focus
I
for
think
this?
the connecting element is the primary focus, because once you get in with someone that you like, I think that connection would be facilitated like off the app, not necessarily the app.
Yeah, that makes sense. And so how would how would I know through the app? So I know you said like the 4 out of 5 star estheticians. How would that part happen? Would it be like more crowdsourced or some other kind of?
Rating in my head would be through customer reviews.
Great. And so I think that might be then the next step, right? If we're going to pursue this as a prototype, would be looking at that interface and how we would get people to leave their reviews. What would that page look like, et cetera. And I think that could provide a really cool service for people to find the estheticians. So great work on that. Because I know probably right now you would just use Yelp, right? But that might not be specific enough.
It's necessarily targeted to this specific industry per se.
Exactly. So thinking about, okay, well, what are your advantages versus a Yelp or maybe just the Google Maps ratings, by being able to focus strictly on estheticians.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay. So next up will be Jihao, and then we'll go to Asan.
All right. Hi guys. Okay. So I'll be presenting on my wireframe about like there's a website. I just made up the name. It's called What's Wrong with Me. So so as a patient, I would like to know what conditions could I possibly have, so that I can go to the right department to to talk to and to receive treatment. So it's actually from a recent personal experience. So my feet just start to swell and huge pain, and I just don't know what happened to it.
Hey Jihao, could you zoom out a little bit?
Oh yeah.
Great, perfect.
Oh, okay, yeah, because I saw this view was kind of too small. I was planning to move around with this, but it's fine.
Oh, okay, that could work too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, I'll just so let's start with this. So with the front page, so the user inputs their symptoms here. So we can start with like what kind of symptoms you're having. There are some example ones. So I feel pain, I feel dizzy, I got fever. These are some common symptoms we're gonna have when there's something wrong with our body. And there's always other stuff. And we can also, there's an option to start with body parts. So just which will be also the next step of here. So for example, if we just click I feel pain, and so where's your pain? So user can click on the body. I try to find a body icon on the balsamic, but I wasn't successful. So I just put one here, but the user will click on the body parts of this human here to indicate where the symptoms takes place and how bad it is. And sometimes you have more than a simple symptom, you have complicated other stuffs, so you can always add more. And based on all these info, so this might be the complicated part of this. So we will rely on a decision tree model or something like that to come up with a final like a list of symptoms that are possibly be. And so here's something like it can if there's a pain in your ankle or some something like that, it can be code. And this might be some possible sample output based on some of the inputs, and it can be code, and the confidence is like 85. And there's like who to call and who to talk to, and we have some external links. So this there's gout, and this is a little bit less confident, and who to call is also the same thing. And so this is mainly for the users we're targeting, is mainly for just random people, just a regular person that's having something weird happened but don't know what to do. We don't, most of them don't have like a lot of medical knowledges about what happens to their body. So it's just to help them to have a broad idea of what might be, but this is like not a consultation or provide any kind of that service. It's just to guide you to call the right department or find the right person to talk to. And so yeah, so going back to our user story here, so the user can input their symptoms here, and so the conditions will be returned as a list of with sorted as using the confidence here. So it's a list of possible conditions, and users can get a little bit some outside resources, and also get the suggested department to contact. And yeah, that's it.
Great, thanks so much. Any questions for Jihao? Mary?
Is this like for self-diagnosis, or is this, because I mean, I see WebMD on it, that kind, or that kind of like a web on it, or I can't, whatever. Anyway, is this like self-help, self-diagnosis? Do I need to go to a doctor? Am I fine to wait it out? Or is this like built-in diagnosis, like telehealth? And also, I don't understand what this confidence thing you're talking about is.
Oh yeah, so for the first question, it's just like that. So it's just like a self, it's a guidance, not nowhere near a diagnostic stuff. It's just like that. If should I be worried a lot, or who should I talk to? Maybe should I go to like some more urgent level of contact, more urgent level of department or something like that? Or we can just if it's code, if like it's pretty sure you're just having a code, and it will cause some of the sore feet or some pain in the muscle, then it's just fine. You can just take rest, stay hydrated. But yeah, but if this is some other things, you might to talk to somebody like ASAP. But it's not like we're not trying to make a diagnostic, and it's not like that. So, and for the confidence part, it's just like a output from the the decision tree model I was mentioning. So it's like how likely it is like this, and so for example, for this here is how likely. So like I'm 85% confident that it's a code, and 65% confident that it, yeah.
Just in terms of general public using this, you might consider changing it to like how common it is, or frequency of occurrence, because confidence is a very clinical term. So if it's depending on who your demographic and your target audience is.
So I think that's a great feed into what we'll be talking about with user testing. I think what we can do is we can take certain guesses within our teams about what's going to be the right terminology. And we can say maybe confidence is not going to resonate well, maybe a different term might. And then ultimately we'll be putting it in front of the users that will give us that answer. And so that I think you're all going to find this in your prototypes, where once you get that into the user testing, a lot of your assumptions will be correct, and a lot of them will be way off. But in being told that they're way off by the users, you'll have a really good place to go in terms of fixing it and iterating, right? And that's the whole point of the lean startup is let's get this thing in front of users, even if it's not quite ready, so that we can start to get their inputs, and then we can build the best app possible. I think with this, what I would like to see as a next step is really where you are right now, right on this slide. I think with the screener, I think that's something that is very doable, and it's something that we could actually nicely fit into the JavaScript that we'll be showing you how to do. But that is sort of just WebMD, right? Which is fine, right, for building a prototype. But then I think this slide is where you can differentiate yourself, right? So then the question might be, okay, are we going to have some interface where a user says their location so that will fit into certain departments, whether that be Mayo Clinic or City of Hope, et cetera? Or is it something where it will connect them through telemedicine to a specific doctor who might then be the operator or switchboard operator to lead them to the right place? So thinking about, okay, what happens after you take that survey and get your results? And how will that help satisfy the user story that I've developed for the users that I seek?
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much. And also thank you, Mary, for all the feedback. This is very useful. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much. Okay. So next up will be Asan, and then we'll go with Mary on deck.
Hey everyone. So, and is it zoomed in the appropriate amount actually? Just to check.
I think that'll work.
Okay.
It's
I'll
hard to
zoom in
read
a little
the
bit.
annotations, but I assume you'll be going through
Sure.
those.
Yeah. So what I have is a concept for Netflix for drug discovery. So the way that this is structured is that it's kind of similar to the Netflix application, in that you have a bunch of panels and a bunch of different genres, but instead of movie genres, you kind of have different medical indications. And the way that these functions kind of fit in towards my user story is that as a researcher, you can see on the side that I want to be able to easily search through novel drugs, novel therapeutics, as well as pre-existing or already approved FDA products. And then that will kind of help me, guide my own novel research. And then from a provider standpoint, I think it would be useful because then you can look through, therapeutics that are already out there, as well as novel therapeutics that are up and coming, maybe in early stage clinical trials and still accepting patients. And then this could be a good way to maybe target patients that are still going for a last chance or a Hail Mary type of approach. So I've integrated those functions accordingly. So what you have on the panel is the name of the drug, and then it fits under a certain genre. And I've integrated the search bar at the very top, where basically you can search by the indication, the specific drug name, the generic name, the specific trial phase that it's in. And then I've also put in a advanced search feature down here. So you're able to go through and select particular specifics for the way that you want to search. If you want to search for hepatocellular carcinoma drugs within the United States sponsored by Pfizer that are in phase 1, then you could do a particular search like that and it would come up. And if you're also looking to find the trial for your patient potentially, then and that they're coming into the hospital at a certain day, then you could put a trial start date as well as an end date in order to figure that out. And so you can get a lot more specific in the way that you search. And I have this report generator at the top as well, just because I think it's always useful if you're able to spread this information in any way possible. If some patients, like to have the information in front of them on paper, then you can have a report generator where I'll zoom in now. And you can select the relevant info that you want for the particular drug. So what will happen when you click this report generator is that you'll have this pop-up and it'll allow you to search for the particular drug, and then say you only want to know, the relevant literature and the key findings, what it treats, and success rates. Then you could do that, and it'll download it as a PDF to your computer. And then when it comes to interacting with these actual panels, so I took this drug in the middle for hepatocellular carcinomas in particular, and if you hover your mouse over it, what will happen is that it'll flip around like this. I didn't know how to make the animation, but this is what I plan to do if I was to follow through this project. It'll provide like a 1-minute synopsis video. And so it'll go through things like the key findings, where it's at, if it's FDA approved or not FDA approved, the mechanism of actions and any relevant findings in about 1 minute. And so that's what would happen if you were to click on it like that. And then if you were to, or sorry, if that's what would happen if you hover your mouse over it. And so it would kind of do an autoplay of the video. And also just to note right here is that it would be similar like the Netflix user experience, where you can kind of just scroll through different drugs that are listed. And if you were to click on the actual panel of nivolumab, this is what I imagine would be useful to have. It would take you to a new page where it lists the drug. Basically the same things as before, but a lot more fleshed out. It would be the summary, its generic name in case you want to do more research on, the actual molecule and things like that. Key findings and takeaways, relevant literature with links that are provided so it would be titles and then the links to the full paper, and then the indications treated and mechanism of action. And at the very bottom, just for, I think this caters a lot more towards the physician side, is a snapshot of its status with clinical trials. So if it's in early stage trials, late stage trials, or it's been FDA approved, and if those trials are recruiting or not. And at the very bottom, it would be a link towards clinicaltrials.gov, but maybe this link could be more specific towards this actual drug. So it would take you to clinicaltrials.gov, where it's pre-entered nivolumab trials. And I just put a share button over there so that you can, easily disseminate this info towards other physicians, patients, and other researchers as well. And so that's pretty much what I've got.
Great, thanks so much. Any questions? I think one thing I like about this one, and I shared the same feeling about some of the others, like the Yelp and the Uber examples, where what you're able to do is play off of an interface that has already really been created, right? And user tested like to the death. And you can just apply that to an industry that doesn't do very good or very well at those sort of interfaces. So I think that could be a neat thing with this as a prototype, is to go through each of these examples and see how can you use JavaScript, HTML, and CSS to make it look a little bit magic, make it look a little bit like Netflix. So I think that's definitely interesting. I think, one thing that you'll want to focus on a little bit is, so with Netflix, right, it's sort of, I'm sitting on the couch, I'm ready to chill, or it's sort of, I'm in it for more of a long run. For like a fast moving researcher, or actually, I guess the question would be, am I a fast moving researcher who needs something sort of on the dime, or am I about to, nestle into this like long all-nighter to explore something? And based on that as your backdrop, what type of features are you going to want to build into this application? I think a lot of medical applications tend to be like, I want it right now. I want the information. Is that what you're going for, or are you going more for like, I want the in-depth, I'm going to go into this really deeply, and this app will help me do that?
Absolutely. I think my idea for it was for it to be a little bit more of a thorough resource.
Okay,
where
great.
you sit down and kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it. Yeah.
So in that case, I think you want to think about how to focus, right? Because you're not going to be able to get very thorough on the whole drug compendium. So how can you sort of, as an MVP, pick out a specialty that you're able to go thorough with, learn from them, and then expand sort of one by one into more specialties. And is it something that you create on your own, or is it something that you use crowdsourcing to get the materials? And if it's crowdsourcing, what does that interface look like? Great. Thanks so much. Okay, next up, Mary, and then Pablo.
All right, today I'm presenting a mock-up for a new app, yours, United Remote Society, and it's designed to reunite quarantine people with their communities. First, as a person affected by quarantine.
I think you might need to share the screen.
Oh, my bad. I thought it was sharing. Share. Can you see it now?
Yes.
So the app's name is URS, United Remote Society, targeting people affected by quarantine and bringing community directly to them. As a person affected by quarantine, I want to feel motivated so that I can be more positive. As a medical professional, I want to provide mental health resources more effectively, accessibly, so I can help patients remotely. These two are answered by features on the homepage, where every day new motivational stimuli will be added in video, meme, and quote form to accommodate a wide variety of people. The mission is to improve your quarantine experience by connecting with others remotely. Each blue highlighted piece is designed to indicate a hyperlink to either a new page, or in some cases, it'll be a drop-down menu that links to an external website to provide patients with proper information, such as suicide hotlines or tips and resources for quarantine. The first user story is met by the motivational videos, and medical professionals can right away on the homepage provide those basic resources. Getting started with the app, you'll have to click either contact us or about, which will either give you an informational video about the company and what the purpose is and how to reach a person. You can either reach to them by making an appointment, so you're guaranteed to talk to a person either through a video or on the phone, or you could just simply reach out via email. And it is equipped with accessibility features for hearing impaired, visually impaired, and language impaired people. You can also rate from the About Us. You can also make an appointment. This will link to a new website, to a new portion of it. You'll have to either log in or sign up, both on the same area. And I'd like to point out that users will have to agree to a disclosure agreement to protect their privacy. The next user story I'd like to talk about is how to connect patients with others, patients, so they can feel less isolated. And I'm sorry, I apologize, this was not updated. To connect virtually, first you have to go through a simple survey, and this will tell a person on the back end which types of users to make suggestions. Right now, initially for an MVP, it would be through email. Later on the line, it would be directly messaged into the app. Your availability is a simple pop-out feature to select your date and your time. And these meet the user store. These allow the people affected by quarantine to feel less isolated and connect to their loved ones. And you can make an appointment also by clicking on connect. And this you can make an appointment with other patients, loved ones, doctors, and therapists. This is after you set up your initial account. And again, you'll have to make an agreement that you're going to be respectful and you're not going to violate this safe virtual space or share any personal information. Again, the same feature exists for inputting your date and time. The most interesting part of this feature, I feel, is empowering people affected by quarantine and allowing them to provide feedback to be a part of the solution and help others. They'll be able to communicate directly through text and different audio, text, or video, depending on their preferences. Each, you will have a passcode so you enter the right one. And this links out to the respective one. And one thing that I'm sorry, I forgot to add was rate my, shoot. Can I just pull up my wireframe? I'm so sorry.
Sure.
This will, crap. I'm so sorry. You'll be able to rate your experience accordingly. First, by accessing basic questions: who is your doctor, how long have you been in quarantine, who your therapists are, and the location. And then you'll do a simple Likert scale survey rating each experience. This will be available anonymously for all users, so they can see where they might want to go and who they might want to be treated with, and see if they can relate to a person on their level of experience with the overall quarantine. That being said, this has future applications to people in long-term hospital stays, because that kind of feeling of isolation is very relevant for those patients. To prototype or not, this serves as a potential solution to a real big issue. It has a range of complexity that accommodates a bunch of different coding levels and interests. There's room to be creative because aesthetics are a crucial component to improving mental health. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Mary. Any questions for Mary? Yeah, so one thing that I really liked was where you talk about sort of, you directly address the MVP aspect and said, someday we'll build in the messaging, but right now we'll start with an email to connect different patients. Now, there's a lot here, right? A lot of different directions that you can go, a lot of great features that you've lined out. Now, when we think about that MVP, what would you see as sort of the easiest implementation that you would tackle in your prototype?
I would say it would be the pairing with the rating. They're kind of like hand in hand, and simplifying the chat to a text chat, a group text chat.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of ambition and really drawing in, how is this going to appeal to people? I think the video chat is so important that it might be worth tackling. And maybe you're condensing it down to maybe a survey and a video chat in terms of the prototype and your MVP. But I feel the connection to whoever you're going to pitch in the prototype phase is so important, especially, and when you go into your user research and you're testing it, I feel that really outweighs the complexity of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a good point to emphasize to all the teams as well, that you don't have to build your own video chat infrastructure or your own video hosting infrastructure. You can rely on what already exists. So you can imagine maybe a video chat link that you build on your site that maybe it hides the person's number or their contact information, so that I can't just do it on my own, but I can click on the button and that will directly set me up with a video chat with someone. And that would be a good, quick and easy way to implement that sort of feature into your project. That's something we'll talk about more as the lectures progress. But they're definitely quick and dirty MVP style implementations of some of
And
these fancy
just
ideas.
Can I just vouch for my complexity? It appears more complex than it is. There's a lot of repeated code. And I designed that I designed the concept specifically with that in mind, that you're copying and pasting your initial code and you're just changing key thing, maybe like a variable or two. So it's very repetitive. So once you get that initial outline of your code, it'll be more or less simple.
Yeah, and I think that's another good point. Some of the prototypes that have been successful in years past have done variations on a theme, and it looks like they built 20 different features, but really it's sort of the same algorithm or the same code that's being done a slightly different way. And that's totally fair game, because that's how a lot of code works, is you sort of put in the work up front, but then you've built something that's very translatable to different types of features, and you just have to change one or two things about it to address whatever the other feature is. So that's definitely a way that we can go about the prototypes. And I think this is a very unique use case that could potentially be very valuable. And it would definitely be interesting to see, if you progress as a prototype, what you focus on and how you get that to be a really interesting looking and engaging prototype for the class. Great. So next up will be Pablo. And then on deck after Pablo will be Giovanni.
All right, can everyone see my screen?
It's sharing. Yes, I can see it now.
Okay.
And maybe zoom in just a little bit.
Give me one moment.
That's perfect.
So as a patient, I want to locate providers that are covered by my insurance so I can easily find hospital clinics anywhere that I am. So basically the main function of the app will be to put in your insurance, you find where insurances are near you, kind of like a Yelp style kind of app. So this will be like the first page on the app. You sign in, put in a password, log in. When you log in for the first time, it'll basically prompt you to put in all of your insurance information, the provider, the type of plan, the member number. It'll also have a function for you to upload a picture of the front and back in case you miss certain key information. Then you'll click the next button, and then that will basically take you to your profile. The profile, you'll just like finish putting in more identifiable stuff like your name, date of birth, address, any health conditions or current medications that you're on, as well as your current doctor. On the top right, you basically have your favorite function, your notification function, and a function that brings you back to your profile. One cool thing is, let's say you have a family, right? And multiple people want to use this app. So you double click on it and it will prompt you to bring you over here where it has different profiles. So you can have your mom, your dad, your brother. If you guys are all under the same insurance, then you might be going to certain doctors for a variety of different reasons. So it's nice that it has that capability. So going back to the top, let's say you've logged in, right? Or you continued as a guest because you didn't want to put in your insurance information. So it'll prompt up a screen like this that'll basically have all of the insurance or all of the like clinics, hospitals near you. The only difference is if you continue as a guest, it'll have the ratings near you, but it won't have it specific to what your insurance covers. The whole point of this app is to only show you what your insurance covers so that you know what you're paying for and you're not surprised by something. So you put in your zip code / provider and you click on one of the stars, right? It'll show you an overall rating from a whole bunch of users. Hopefully, you know, after some time it has more data, but obviously at the beginning it won't have any data. But it'll have an overall rating of the location as well as a bio of the location, what they're known for and whatnot, as well as a list of doctors and specialties. So you can further navigate exactly what you're looking for, and kind of like Yelp, it'll also potentially have a comment section as to what people liked about the visits, what they didn't like about the visits, and each individual star will have a link specific for like that hospital. Like if you're going to like Kaiser or something like that, it'll pop up that specific region specific website. And then if you continue scrolling down, this functionality would only continue if you have your insurance already set up. That way it will show you the availability of potential appointments, at which point you can then do a couple of options. If you decide to sign up, you can move over to this screen where it would give you the option to set up some kind of notification or some kind of reminder so that you don't forget about your appointment. And then you can figure out the frequency of the reminder day before, every day, week before, and whatnot. You also have the option to call a specific provider depending on which location that you pick. And clicking on that button will show you the list of providers of that specific area. It'll show their name, phone number. It'll also give the individual ratings. So let's say now you've gone through all that entire process, right? And you were happy with your visit or you weren't happy with your visit, you can click leave a review. This will then prompt you to a very simplistic page where you can write a review and tell others what you liked, what you didn't like, and then you can rate. And then what I'm thinking is maybe include like a small questionnaire afterwards, just kind of seeing what you liked and what you didn't like to further like get more information so that we can help the user pick the best location for them. Another function that I was thinking of would be, so kind of like Yelp and other like shopping apps, you have an ability to click like your favorite location, right? And it'll bring it up. So very similar to the list of providers will be the favorite button. It'll have the exact same information, but the only difference is that this will be strictly your favorite locations. So with your favorite locations, you'll be able to quickly pull it up and just see the locations that you've been to. There's another over here. So let's say you go through, right, and there's 4 bottom options on the bottom. There's the map, the search, the home button, and then a drop-down menu. So you hit the map button, and then it brings you back to this original view where you can then hit list view or recent views. List view will basically give you everything that's on the map currently in no particular order. It'll just show you just everything more consolidated so it's easier to see, as opposed to recent views. It'll show recent visits. It'll show you all the places that you've gone to recently, which is different from list view and also different from the favorites. If you click on search, this will help you search by provider, search by questions, anything that you may come up with. And hopefully if it's within the scope of the capability of the app, then it'll prompt some kind of answer. The home button will basically just bring you back to the sign-in page, which is over here. And then the functionality of the drop-down button seen right here will basically just bring up like a drop-down menu that has like the About Us, Help Center, Contact Us, FAQ settings, and then terms of use and whatnot, like all the other apps do. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Great, thanks so much. Would you like to keep it moving
all
along?
over the place because I started doing it and then I realized there was a different way to do it, but I was already in too deep.
No, I think this is great. It shows a great usage of Balsamiq. Obviously, you went very deep into a lot of features. I think that the key here, as with a few others, is so you've got so much that you put into this assignment, and now there's a need to prioritize, right? So figuring out how you pick the right features to go after for a prototype. And the feedback I would give there, and this applies to everyone, is use user stories to do that, right? So you have a broad user story that could probably be broken down into more specific user stories that can help you figure out, which is the user story that I want to go after the most specifically. Do I want someone to be able to maintain a care team of multiple providers and then focus in on the favorites? Do I want anyone to just be able to find right away who's the nearby person who they're covered by, which I know is a tremendous need, but maybe more on the shallow side, versus sort of in the in-between, do I want to find the best provider nearby? And then that would be a focus on the reviews. So that will help you prioritize as you move forward if this ends up becoming a prototype. All right, thanks so much. Next up, we've got Giovanni. And then after Giovanni, we're going to go with Tyler.
Okay. Can you guys see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So my whole idea was I did it on I guess I wanted to focus on pet health, so specifically with dogs. So then this is the first desktop page. So I actually did desktop versus mobile. Company name is called Padoodle. And so the whole idea behind it is like maybe the average person, if they start off as a young kid or young child, they could potentially have maybe 5 pets throughout their lifetimes. And so usually there's when you initially get a pet, usually there's like this time frame to where you really get to focus on their diet of the certain animal. So that can take maybe 6 months, a year, just depending on your pet and I guess your own observations. And so from that, there's this blogish type, user-friendly information to where people sign up for it and input their pets, and then specifically the type of food and like diet preferences for their own pet. And so specifically I'm focused on dogs. And so here's the first one. It's kind of small. I don't know if you want me to exit the screen share.
I think it's good.
Okay. Yeah, so I just focused on like the Reddit template. And so here on the first, we have the search bar. And so I guess we can talk about here on the notes. Usually it's gonna focus on the new pet owners. And so what they're looking to get out of it is basically really see like what pet, maybe with like price and affordability, because small dogs versus larger dogs. They really get to decide based off this whole website. It can essentially give them information on what their preference and like versus their lifestyle choices and things of that nature. And then it can also tailor towards the pet food manufacturer in a sense, to where they can have sort of like this outlet and seeing real-time reviews of certain pet food, and if their process and like objectives are really being passed. And so here now talking against a desktop, here we have a search bar, and so you can do it through either the type of dog, a specific breed, or you can do it through specific age. And so it's just a general search bar. And then over here, given that it is just a website, it's a free site, it gives advertisers, maybe perhaps in the pet food industry, I would want to, like if it gives enough traction, be able to monetize through advertising. And then notice that it is a free to use site, so you don't need to become a user to browse, similar to Reddit. But however, to interact, you do have to create a user profile. And so it's going to start off with common breeds here. And so these are just depicted by pictures. And so common breeds in regards to, I guess, the most popular dogs currently owned in the US. And then perhaps we can do like a global perspective, but I guess right now it's just US. And then here we have sort of like a filtering thing here. So we can filter it through breed, through age, because, obviously like through puppies versus older age and like mid-age and older age. Maybe it's a different type of diet. Then we have a certain type of brand to tailor towards, because there are brands out there that are quite hefty, like with fees. And again, whether it's a small or larger dog, it's going to be a big price difference. And then the type of food. So there's different types of food, whether there's kibble, there's raw diets, or certain sort of like a mix between the two. And then obviously like the cost, so cost specific to, and I guess the cost can be broken down, whether it's per month or like per item. And then so here, this is just a general web page when you type in Padoodle, and then it's going to have for, I guess it's going to be filtered throughout what's the most recent or a hot topic, like perhaps monthly. And so maybe AI can figure that out, or I'm not too sure how that works, but pretty sure Reddit has a similar software. And so here's just an example. So it's going to have the dog breed here, and then it's going to have an image that the user posted with the title name here, and the number of comments, and then with these sort of ellipses to sort of determine whether you want to copy this link, for a direct link to this post. And then, so that's what this looks like here. And then on the right side, sort of like another interaction on the main page is we're gonna have most popular breeds in terms of the certain web page. And so here on top is gonna be in general in the entire US. And then here on this right side, it's gonna be the most posts. So in other words, like the most popular dog that's been posted about. And so here, when you click on, say, the Maltipoo, it's going to go down here, and then this is what it's going to relatively look like. And so, again, it's just similar to the Reddit template. It's a proven template that currently works. And so here, we're just going to have the arrows that, up and down to next post. And then here, this is going to be a general photo. So, for example, the Maltipoo is just going to be a chosen photo, general photo of our choosing to represent the dog breed. And then here, just a default picture of the user. And then here, again, it's just self-explanatory title, image, and then the text for the postings. And then here, just in case, I guess for manufacturing friendly, maybe there's some harsh comments about their product. And so depending, I guess it's kind of like a mix, there's going to be a chance to hide or either like report certain comments. They get too explicit or just sort of like biased comments for or against certain companies. And then, yeah. And so then here, it's giving the perspective of a user without an account. And so here you can sign up to sort of have a comment. And then here we have a certain comment here. So then this comment is unrelated to pet. So maybe we might want to, report that and be like, okay, it's unrelated. And then we should be able to figure that out. And then here on the sides, it's just basically a more in-depth on each icon with the comments here. But yeah, that's the general idea with the whole website.
Great. Thanks so much, Giovanni. I think this is actually a really well done user story with the use case. I think there's a lot of potential here. I would like to see, I think there's more opportunity to flesh some of those features out more. Right. And so that if this ends up being a prototype, because I think there is a lot of potential there, I think that's one thing that you'll want to focus on is, okay, so you've got these elements of how you want to show sort of the different dog breeds and how that factors into food and costs and all that. Where do you input that? Is that more crowdsourced? And what are the features that would go into like making a post, things like that? So I think that would be the next step with that. But I think it is a great use case, and your user stories really fed into that well. So thanks so much. I do want to keep things moving. So next up would be Tyler.
What's the name of the website just for, the survey?
Padoodle.
Padoodle, yeah.
Okay, and then after Tyler will be Alec. And then that should be it, but if I haven't called you yet, send me a chat. Okay, go ahead, Tyler.
So my app is mainly called Care Jobs. I mainly base it off of Indeed. However, its specialty is more geared towards freelance caretakers, RNs, things like that. And my inspiration was kind of based on the recent pandemic and how it's ongoing and how it created a lot of unrest within that community. So I have two user stories. This first slide being as a freelance caretaker in an impacted or slow workforce, I wanted to be able to see open jobs in real time so that I can find a job and help people at the same time. So on this first page, this would be a starting page, given that you would create your own profile and you would put in different keywords such as job type, the location, the specialty that you're mainly that your expertise is in, and maybe a disease that you want to treat or help treat. So for example, this is an elderly caretaker job, which has an emphasis in Alzheimer's that lasts for about 3 days. Location will be in Claremont, California, and just a description of the job. And if you would click any one of these jobs, it would bring them to the job page, which provides the full description and an option to send a message to the job poster. And there's two aspects to this applicant view page. One is the job feed, which is right here, and the recent searches. Every search that you would do would be banked in this recent searches page, and it would go into here. So for example, the user searched up home assignment, an RN in Claremont, or just general caretaker jobs, and it would show you any new jobs that would pop up. as it would go along. And at the top here, there's of course notifications. If any jobs that you apply to has a response, any messages that the job posters are communicating to you. And mainly the main navigation would be in the options tab that would provide like the profile, settings, switching between the applicant and the poster view, posting a job, save jobs, etc. And a little notification would pop up if in the case something would happen. And clicking each job search box would bring you back to the original search page that you saw initially. So as we go to the job posting page on the job poster side, you would put the title, the location, what kind of specialty that the job is for, and a description of the job, including the disease, the abilities affected of the patient, and any specialties that you might desire. Also the date range and desired criteria of the applicant that you would want. These are little switches if you want to include references, or if you want applicants to provide their resume or LinkedIn, and also a little drop down for whatever job title you're looking for. And given that you get a notification or for an applicant, or you just want to look at your applicants for the jobs that you posted, you would go ahead and go to this screen right here, which gives you kind of like a list of available applicants. So for example, myself would be an ENT, there'd be a little profile picture here, different links for social media, and just basically a rundown of where I'm based, my desired pay, professional title, specialty, years experience, et cetera, et cetera. And there would be a little option to message and start a conversation about the job in general. And as you select them, they expand and collapse. There's a little comment right here that explains that. And the little title would turn blue. And there's an option to actually cancel the posting if in the case you don't find an applicant, or close the posting if you do find an applicant. And the user story for this would be, as someone looking for a caretaker for a family member, friend, or overall someone who needs it, I want to be able to post jobs for those in specific specialties within my own criteria. So it's kind of like a two-way street. And I think I've had the idea of fleshing out the options tab a little bit more, and I think I want to display that more in the future as the idea moves on. And yeah, that's my wireframe.
Great, thanks so much. I really like that you're benchmarking, sort of as some others have done, and an incumbent like Indeed, but making it to something that is really needed. But also, you know, it's sort of with a caretaker, a lot of the times we're seeking as individuals, not as employers, to hire a caretaker. And so being able to cater to that, I think, is really important. So I think as a next step, you'd want to think about, okay, given that this is different from Indeed, because Indeed does do healthcare, right? But they don't really cater towards this more informal, like, hey, I just need a caretaker for my family or my, you know, elderly parent. I think thinking about what needs to be different with that, I think would be the next step, and I think that would take this to the next level as a prototype for something that could really be something that would be inspiring and make people want to use. Okay. All right, thanks so much, Tyler. And then last up will be Alec, and then we'll be done.
Sorry, let me just go on full screen mode. Okay, so for my mock-up, the wireframe, it's essentially Yelp for physicians. So starting off with the user stories. So as a patient, theoretically, you'd want to be able to see like physician ratings to determine which physicians to visit based on, you know, like higher ratings, as an example. So some functions of this would be to find physicians near your particular location, and then also to categorize physicians by patient overall ratings, such as like specialty, location, types of insurance coverages, some examples. And then lastly, to determine physicians' unique strengths and weaknesses based on some of the ratings by the users. And then as a physician, as perspective, you'd want to be able to see how patients rate the services for the physicians so they can deliver a more effective healthcare theoretically. And some functions of this would be ability to see how effective physician treatment is based on the overall ratings from patients, and also based on unique ratings as well from physicians so they can improve upon some of the lacking areas. So now going into the mockup, you would have a welcome image from the user, and then looking at the map right here, you'd be able to find some physicians based on like these like locator icons. So you essentially would pull them up, and then it would have like a profile of that physician. This icon right here would just set your preferences and your location to your current location if you have those enabled. Right here, this link would be able to have the user find physicians nearby in case of like an emergency or something, or just for preference. And then lastly, on the bottom right here, so you'd have like a home screen. So this is the home screen. Me would be like your profile for this app, and then more would be like settings, privacy, and then again preferences. Right here would have a help button in case the user needs help. And then lastly, the search for physicians. So if you would to put your click on the mouse or click on here, it would take you to this page on the screen, prompt you a different screen. And then you could actually search for physicians by like name, specialty, hospital, insurance coverages, for example. You could also additionally filter it out, adding more filters for physicians. And then it would automatically set to your current location if you have that enabled. And then from right here, it would either have like your most recently searched physicians with like a picture of that physician, their name, address, and then again, their overall star rating. And then you have your keyboard and then the search. So if you like put in like a physician name or something, you would hit search and it would take you to that. But if you were to click on one of these, it would take you, say for example, number 2, it would take you to this one. So this would be like a profile of the physician. So again, has the help in case you need help for the user. It would have that icon. And then again, it would have that physician name, more detailed. So like their specialty, what hospital they're associated with, and then also like their address for the hospital, and then insurance coverage that they accept. Right here, you'd have an overall star rating. So this would be like out of 5. Out of all these criteria right here, for example, so something like expertise, communication, timeliness, insurance coverage, and then also location. So based on this, you could like see like, how users are able to rate these physicians for patients, and also for, physicians to see, how well and effective their healthcare is. And yeah, that essentially is my mockup.
Great. Thanks so much, Alec. I think this might be something that ends up pairing well with, I think, some of the previous ones that we've seen around Yelp for physicians too. So maybe we'll create a team around that. But I think you did a great job of fleshing out a lot of the notes that would go into satisfying these user stories. So we're past time. Thanks for sticking around. I don't really have too much that I need to share during lecture. Expect some announcements from me in the coming days as I set up the teams. And then there's the next step. This is sort of the most annoying part, I'm not gonna lie. It's setting your computer up to be able to code. So you're gonna have to download some software, and everyone's computer is a little bit different. That's the annoying part. So don't be shy about doing office hours or sending me emails so that we can troubleshoot that. But great job. I think you guys did a really good job, especially given the amount of people. Sometimes you might expect a good amount of not so good ones, but I think for the most part, the floor was pretty high with this class. So I'm excited about what you all are going to do for the prototypes. So great job. Enjoy the rest of your day.